Tō, hui whānei. E tīmata i tēnei hui i te raro te karakia. Tuia ki runga, tuia ki raro, tuia ki roto, tuia ki roho, tui te here tangata. Ka rongo te pō, ka rongo te ao. Ki te here, haumi e hui e tai i e. Kia koutou ngā manuhiri, koutou no Morpham, kia koe Dave rawa ko Stu, tēnā kōrua, me tōna kai mahi tautoko te kaupapa Shay, tēnā rā koutou, nau mai haere mai. So, welcome. We're looking forward to the workshop on the Otago Harbour Issues and Options project. Before we pass the ball to you, I will just note apologies from Councillor Gary Gallagher and Michael Laws. I think Andrew Noon is likely to come back. He's apparently in the building or not far. We'll note his absence at the moment, and also for Karen Coops, who's an apology also. Receive those apologies. Not add up. No, move.
No, you don't need to move them.
Don't need to move them. That's a good shot. We'll just note them. Thank you. So this is dear to many people's hearts, I think, the Otago Harbour, and I'm sure we'll hear that you're not suffering for a lack of information. So I'd like to keep it.
Kia ora, kai kanuhira, tēnā koutou, rakatira, tēnā koe, ko Shay van der Hoek tōku ingoa, he kai tohutau mahtua rautaki ahau, ki kai nuhira, rahi Ōtākou. I'm Shay, I'm a Senior Advisor Strategy here at ORC, and I think we have not suffered from a lack of information, I would agree. I'd just like to start by introducing Dave and Stu from Morpham Environmental, who are going to be running workshop today. But I will start by running you through the agenda for the afternoon on the slides. So we'll just start with an introduction to the project, the history and the purpose. Then I'll hand over to Dave and Stu, who will work with you guys and have a chat about how you connect to the harbour. And then they'll give us an update on the project so far. And then we want to hear from you. What do you think the issues and opportunities are? So start off with an introduction to the project. So we all know Te Awa Ōtākou, Otago Harbour is a valued asset to the Otago region. It's an important part of the region's environment, culture and economy, and people treasure it for multiple recreation pursuits. It's central to the Otago story. We've also heard from Ōtākou Runaka. They've told us that Te Awa Ōtākou has a pivotal role in the well-being of hapu and whānau. It's a source of identity, a plentiful provider of kaimoana, pathway to fishing grounds, mahi kakai locations and villages throughout the harbour and for seaward journeys beyond. And traditionally it's a mode for other hapu to visit. I think this is a great line. In today's world, it is a lifeline to international trade that benefits the region as well. So our communities have raised concerns, I think, with councillors, so you've probably heard some of this as well, and with staff about the health of the harbour, the ecological health and the water quality, changing cultural landscapes and access for mahi kakai. And we've heard about access for recreational activities and some unrealised commercial potential. I'm sure to name but a few of the things we've heard about. So we've heard from a lot of different people over the years about their concerns and ideas. And before we decide how we respond, we need to have an up-to-date, comprehensive and balanced understanding of the issues and opportunities. So step one of that is an issues and opportunities report, which is what we're here to talk about today, which will be a non-regulatory report. And And we are working closely with DCC and with Mana Whenua on that. And we've selected a writing team, Morpham Environmental, Ōkaha, Studio Pacific Architecture, and the University of Otago. And the report should improve our understanding of the different uses, values, and needs. As you'll well know, it will need to cover a whole lot of things, including the history and cultural landscape, the issues and opportunities, both current and future, across environmental, cultural, recreational, and commercial. It will need to look at the roles and responsibilities of the agencies, but stakeholders as well, and how they overlap or if there's any gaps. And then it'll give us some options for approaches that we could take together with DCC, Mana Whenua, key stakeholders, and the wider community. In areas with a wide range of uses, values, and needs, solutions to one problem can sometimes create problems elsewhere. So we'll need to be comprehensive and balanced and cover a variety of things, including that physical setting, the environmental trends, previous studies and reports, the district and regional plans, consents, and current and planned work programs, as well as those competing uses and aspirations, and of course, the impacts of climate change. In terms of community engagement, we're aware that the DCC has recently completed a harbour reserves consultation for their reserves management plan. Communities really shared quite a lot in that process, so we are mindful that this needs to add value to that and build on it, that work that's already been done. So in addition to that consultation, the writing team are doing engagement with a cross-section of stakeholders, but Dave and Stu will elaborate on that. And that obviously the stakeholder feedback will be reflected in the report. So that's step one. Step two will be the Otago Regional Council and DCC staff receiving the report, considering the options and making recommendations to each council later this year. And we'll be looking at how those recommendations best sit with the existing work programs like ICM and other things that are happening already. So I'll now hand over to Dave and Stu, who will take you through a session about how you connect to the harbour.
Kia ora, thanks Shay. Thanks for having us here today and for the opportunity to connect with you and get your input on what's been a pretty rich engagement process so far. So what we wanted to do, just to get our heads in the space and connect ourselves to this valuable asset that is yours to look after and manage, is to go through a bit of a process where, if I could ask you to please consider two things. What is your connection to the harbour? And the second thing is, what is the most significant event in your history or connection with the harbour, either positive or negative, and to record that on a sticky note. And we've developed a draft timeline, which we're populating as we go along, and that's up on the wall there. And then we also have a map. And so the request is to spend some time thinking about those two things, write them down, and then we're going to either place a sticky on the timeline in terms of where it is in the history of your connection, or if it's spatially located, to place it on the map. And if you also just put your initials or your name, so in case we want to follow up with you at a later stage. I think that was it. So that's the exercise we'd like to dive into now, just to connect with the harbour. Everyone happy with that?
Can you just repeat exactly what you're chasing?
Okay, so first thing is your connection. So what is your relationship? What is the value you get or benefit you have from engaging with the harbour system? And the second thing is event you're aware of in the history of your experience of the harbour, either positive or negative, that has an impact on the system or your use and value you derive from that connection you have. So, yes.
Is it in your lifetime or your history? Like,
I think your history.
Yeah,
If there's something that resonates with you from your whānau's history, then sure.
So I can spend a couple of minutes thinking about that, and then we'll head up there and stick it on the timeline and or on the map.
Mind what colours we use?
No, the colors will be important for the next one, but right now any color will do. Thanks.
oh, sorry, it was. Oh, actually, you can have all these ones.
Is it, do you want one thing on one page or just can I put up?
Oh, okay, thank you.
If they're related, then we'll.
I might. You see,
Yes, maybe when you've just got some words down, we'll head up to the wall there just to get the legs on the ground. And if they relate specifically to a place within the harbour, then obviously they can be put up on the map there. But if they relate to a particular time, then there's a timeline there. But otherwise, we'll just put them up and we'll just sort of share a few connections. And then we've got a bit more of a session after that. Yeah. You didn't have
Very creative.
And just let's get a few of you share your
No, no, it's-
You got an essay, keep on
Eh?
with your interaction with the
Wow,
harbour
just
lots.
so much.
Yeah, it'd be hard to know where to start.
I just, where do you stop?
Gee, you've got a few there. Can you have one on
No,
Surely not.
I've just stopped doing that.
Opened up floodgates. Yeah.
No one else does, so why would you? That is very good. It's nice with its silicon lid.
Yeah, that's the colours out too bright.
It passes the taste.
Yeah.
Taste for people.
I would say the neutral colours. They're not too it's-
Blue is a wild, anything good.
Yeah.
It looks practical.
Yeah. It's really.
If you don't mind, if we just come back up, we'll just talk through a couple of them just to sort of set the scene for the rest of the afternoon. So I wonder if Brian, got a few meetings with you, so maybe you want to kick off and just
Okay.
let us know you're finishing.
Well, my connection is, I call it my home, where I live, my land actually overlooks the harbour. Just coincidentally, I had a guy at my place doing some pest control. And it was good today, this 2 days ago, and he turned around and looked at the harbour and he said to me, this is the guy, many years old, and he says, I love the harbour. He said, he loves the harbour. And I, wow, it's amazing. Everyone talks about, you know, this connection. There was this guy, you know, working with it. And in terms of an event, I had two, my ancestors, like a lot of us, probably all of us, you know, arrived in the harbour. But another significant event for me is probably when I, you know, became a little bit more politically engaged, is when the community agreed, enacted to remove the sewage from the harbour. You know, that was it seems to me that was a huge event because it was an acknowledgement that what was happening wasn't good enough. And it was a big project. And it was the start of other projects, because as soon as you started moving sewage, you had to treat it, you had to convey it, and then it was conveyed to the sea. And now we're talking about actually, ideally, it's not put back into the sea, it's better ways, you know, the land, if it was possible. You know, that's me.
Would anyone else like to share there?
Okay, my event was 2015 floods. So I'm not from Dunedin. I live in the Headlands, but I'm from Dunedin. And those floods highlighted for me the vulnerability of people who are living on a swamp. And seeing that through the TV news mostly, I guess that this is the climate change. Do you want to talk about the other one as well? We're just doing the one.
No, I mean, it's up to you.
Oh,
We
the other one's
just
really
5
quick.
minutes or whatever.
Because I'm not from Dunedin, my connection with the harbour is physically as a tourist, or physically and emotionally as somebody that lives in the headwaters. Not the direct catchment of here, but it's still very important to me that everything that happens up there is coming down somewhere to the coast. You know, includes food.
What I need to see.
Yeah, that's right, you do.
Now, I've got a 3-metre kayak, and I kayak on the harbour. The thing I always notice when I'm out there is this, how do you, when you went out there,
It's underutilized
Mm.
in terms of sort of its recreational attraction. I gather shellfish just off. I kayak out from Henry Bay at low tide and get out onto those sort of sandbanks there, and you just scoop them up. Only takes a few minutes. Yeah, cockles, yeah. I've done some rowing on the harbour too. It was very interesting. Just a little bit. And I've been on Monarch several times in another work that I've had. The Monarch is always a really good trip to take people from overseas. So, yeah, so have a look at the harbour. So certainly appreciate it. Biking around the harbour. It's great having a bike track and yeah, from Port Chalmers right through to Portobello. I'm very proud of the harbour.
So maybe I'll jump in there. Because for a good year I was taking people up and down in the Monarch. You know, teaching them the history, the cultural and the natural history of the harbour. I don't know if I've still got the spiel in there that I could rattle off, but that's a big part of my connection to the harbour. But obviously, also I've done out in the Polaris, I'm sure many OSC staff have as well. Studies and for recreation as well. So the most important thing I put people arriving at the harbour, but the most important thing I've witnessed impactful for the harbour was the opening of Ōtākou. I think that was very fortunate.
Edward. Key connection is ancestral tradition, creation, stories that talk about the harbour and our connection to it. And the second thing, we've got a couple of things here, but the most significant thing I think I've been involved in that's influenced me is in the sewage out of the harbour. I really enjoyed, funnily, working with the city engineers and others doing that, because I never thought that way. And it did, and it was the visionary thinking of key people at that time. I think Mary Douglas might have big hand from that as well. But and we've got another one. Another significant thing was the Aramana smelter. That's triggered me to do a lifetime of work on. That's why I do environmental work. Because I could not believe that anyone would put a smelter in our harbour, and I was mortified. And we were lucky it didn't go ahead. I don't think it was because we opposed it. It was just the real price of aluminium collapsed. It was a pivotal moment for me. Plus, floundering in our Ōtākou channel, and we're surfing the waves and the dinghy on the good side.
Yes.
Without life jackets.
Of course.
But I could go on.
I want to grab another couple maybe.
I've a lifetime connection. We had a boat and we sailed regularly out on the harbour and with kayaks. And absolutely loved it. I'm very proud of the work that we did the Cycleway, which was a road raising and climate change project, not cycleway or walkway, but there was a benefit of it and how that has activated space. Reflecting on Brian, when we weren't starting would be go away for weekends, and the joy of getting home at night and the view as you come down Stewart Street of the harbour, it really connected you to a place. And I still get that buzz feeling that when you come down Canterbury from on the North Road or down Stewart Street, it's a close, it hugs you, and it's very safe. And then only negative is I love the visual aspect of it and seeing people activated on it, but there isn't enough of it. I just don't understand why more people aren't out there. What is stopping some of that stuff happening? Why don't we have people reading out boards and bikes right down there?
Kevin, you're a Port, really?
Yeah, so my connections in Port Chalmers, and so it's either end of the harbour really. So great and grandfather helped build them all. And worked on it at the stages of it, and I think great grand was still down there on on a dredgy thing that we got a Scott caught and that was the end of it, so getting in there somewhere, so that's a, yeah, the reason. But I don't think there's anything I haven't done on the harbour, all legal, of course. Being from Port Chalmers, we always do that, and we used to actually swim from Back Beach to the islands, run up the islands and climb up there. You might remember some big power poles that used to be there, so we used to climb up them as far as we could, and then sit there and watch the harbour, and you could see things, you know, swimming in the harbour and all that sort of stuff. So while it was a bit nutty what we did, it was actually quite, you know, quite a swimming thing to actually do. And then we'd swim. We never actually swam right across the other side, but the Portobello, but we certainly did used to row. So I rowed from Port Chalmers to Youngs, and my family's always been connected with that. Yeah, we rowed the whole length of the harbour at times. So, and then yeah, Port Chalmers regattas and North End regattas and that sort of stuff. It's just, and then I sailed, you know, raced my boat to 16 on the non-stop. So it's just so much.
You still sail?
Yeah, well, technically it's been a bit. Yeah, it should be doing more, but yeah, it's still there. It's out this weekend. So we're back into it this weekend. What else can we do? And the floundering down the we box the vast in the bottom of the water and the salt marshes down. That's what I had on those days. We'll put it in there and grab flounders, flat stick, and feed the family, feed everyone. Play golf and cricket down on the salt marshes, and there's just so much. Yeah, really. Probably the only thing that you ever remember about that end of the harbour, apart from that Aaron Wine, was David Gray that came up at maybe one day down there, which is still, yes, for someone who went through school with something like that happened. So, what a impact. Yeah. That's a great spot.
Well, I think it's really good that you guys have got really good stories, and it's awesome. I'm completely different. I've got no connections to the Otago. We're one of as far away from the harbour as you possibly can, still be Otago. So I actually wrote out the most significant thing was the first shipment of frozen meat out of Otago Harbour, because that revolutionised the farming industry, which affected us, and that's where we got a connection initially. But then as kids, we did the albatrosses in the Larnac Castle, and that created a bit of the history. We'd always bring our family down, and you'd always have would be part of the Otago thing. So you know, we got no connection, but we actually do have, and so that's how it's sort of come through. And in recent times, I must say, as I've learned more about the harbour and around the Marai and the iwi and the stories that the harbour has, you get when I go down by Ōtākou, there's a real sense of serenity there. And I don't know what it is. It's just a little bit different, and you just can sit and look. And although when you're driving out there, it's like, why is there not people out? Why have we got buildings around this waterfront, and why are not people doing boats? But when you get further out, so it's actually quite good. There's not a lot of people here, because it has got a real feeling of peace, I guess. So that's probably my summation, being pretty new to the
When were those first frozen meat?
1888.
Actually came from Harbour, just to put that on there.
So I put on the
The ship was called Dunedin.
Did
you say you're alive in 1888?
Yeah, pretty much. But for me, like, I always, like, when I'm growing up, it's like the Otago's connection to the world would be via the harbour. And that flows through with the iwi stories and stuff as well, and stuff that we've done with down South Otago with Portland. It's like it all starts to make sense when you start to learn the point.
If you might interject there, when the ships came in, when I was at school, we were allowed to go out and dip the mast. That's where you just drop the flag and lift it. On the ship of our choice. We'd read the shipping news, we'd have our favourite boats, my boat would come in and I'd go out and dip the mast. You'd see someone go to the warehouse down the back of the ship, and they used to have flags. In the dip. Yeah, we were very much a maritime school.
Yeah. So where was that? That was
in the 50s, maybe, early 60s, and some of them would send us brochures, others would invite us to go over and visit their ships. The stories go on.
There used to be 2 dry docks in Port Chalmers.
That's right.
Yeah, you know, where the ships would come in and people would leave, and then every so often there'd be a run of fish come up the harbour as they were about to shut the gates. And you get painful. The other thing to see kids in the street running something, and you just knew that it was time to grab a spear.
Oh, is that right?
Get down to the golf and get them. That's like back on Portland. A good project for that way. Yeah. And that was just a byproduct of that, and everyone got fed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we've probably got time for the last couple of.
Yeah, well, I lived at St Leonard's for 18 years, right by the harbour, during a formative period of my life, I suppose, when my children were little, not so little. And so they went to school, and the place into which is right just over the road from harbour, and the associated things like that involved Sea Scouts, or sailing out of the back beach of Port Chalmers. And so travelling up and down that harbour road, in a car, on bus and train, most days. And so that was a very defining part of the environment we were in the harbour right there. And I suppose going back, I hadn't thought of that, but yes, some of my ancestors did arrive on apparently the slowest ship to ever make the trip from Britain to Port Chalmers, arriving on the end of 1848, the third ship that came out, the Blunder.
Yeah, mine have both been mentioned. Visual amenity, I can see from my front room. I stand on my tiptoes, I can see the harbour. So I think, you know, from a Dunedin resident perspective, there's hundreds, if not thousands of people that have got that benefit on a daily basis. Whatever. The other significant positive event was the removal of the primary treated wastewater discharge from the harbour. That was like others have said, a major step in the right environmental direction. So
Cool. Lucky last.
Sorry, everyone. It is pretty cool though, sharing these stories. Long association as well with all sides of my family came through the channel there and settled early on in Dunedin. When I was a preschooler, we lived at Harbour, and my dad worked at the catchment board. And he's I suppose he was a scientist, and every weekend we'd go and he would spearfish for all our protein fish from Harrington Point. So I remember him cycling home and he told me what he'd been doing. Then later on he got involved in the sewage upgrades as well as I think, consultant at that point. There was one time he dyed the whole harbour a bright colour to see what was happening with the dish. That was a really fun day. But yeah, probably similar to Kevin, just getting out there amongst it and playing and having fun as a kid. Learned to swim in those tidal pools at Harbour and stuff like that. Just really fun. You know.
That's everyone, isn't it? Cool. It's I think it's worthwhile doing this just to get everyone's head in the space. We're going to run through a bit of stuff now in terms of what we've been up to in the last few weeks, and then a bit of an exercise around some of the issues and things. But yeah, thank you all for sharing those stories, and sit down now.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Through the 60s.
Should probably just quickly introduce ourselves too. I guess it'd probably be a good thing. Yeah, Shay mentioned we're from Morpham. My name's Stu Farrant. So I'm an ecological engineer, so work largely in how we manage land and water to protect water typically. I've also got a long connection with the harbour, so it's both sides of my family and both sides of my wife's family come from Otago and Dunedin. So I spent my childhood with holidays either out of Warrington or up in Mornington. So the harbour's sort of been in my blood since I was a kid, but I have lived in Wellington my life. My father moved up there, but know it well and really fortunate to be working on this project. We as a company, we work on a lot of projects of this sort of scale and type around New Zealand, a lot of catchment planning type work, right through to sort of design and implementation of things. So yeah, we're very excited, I guess you'd say, when we got this project, because it's really, I think it's a really important piece of work for an important place. So that's it.
Cheers, Stu. Thanks. And apologies, still trying to get rid of the South African tendencies to dive into the business. So apologies for not introducing early on. Yeah, so I'm an environmental scientist, but more on the social side of things. So I really love projects like this where really trying to understand those people's connections with the landscape and the system and the connections between the people, because people are a problem, but they're also the solution. And so I really enjoy understanding those connections with the ecology being the underpinning emphasis. And quite a watershed moment for me, for having been in New Zealand for 4 years, to be in a room and recognizing people from the previous workshop I was involved in the Manaheri Kia project. So it's quite nice to start getting familiar with New Zealand. And so yeah, so again, this is the kind of work that I've enjoyed and I was involved with in South Africa 25 years around catchment management and working with people to inform decision making and really focused on actions to move things forward in a positive trajectory. So really appreciate the opportunity to be involved in this and hopefully support all of you in taking things forward. So and maybe just to mention, there's a couple of other people on our team. We've got a few people from Morpham, and we're working with Studio Pacific, who are landscape architects, and Kate put together their timeline, and they're doing some of the visuals that will help us try and tell the message and portray what we've learned. And then we're also working with marine sciences at the university, who in all interactions are connected to everyone and everything that's happening around here. And so that's one of the meetings we still need to have is with the university around their broader role in the harbour. Yeah, so that's us, and yeah, it's been a very rich experience so far, and we'll just reflect a little bit on what we've been up to in terms of the project process. So yeah, that's a bit small, but don't worry too much about detail. I'll just kind of take you through the process. So we kicked off in May and just downloaded some initial information just to get a sense of what was available and get a sense of the local context. And then the last month or 6 weeks, we really focused on engagement. And to inform that, we went through a sort of targeted a stakeholder mapping process. We were really trying to understand the different organizations and interests across the harbour to inform the engagement. And we actually pivoted as a team, because we initially thought about having a bit of a reference group, but it was apparent that wouldn't give us the depth and level of understanding that this warranted. And so we've taken an approach of meeting with a whole range of organizations. And now we're at the point of distilling that information, making sense of it, and drafting a report, which we'll do over the next month or so. And then we'll go through a process of presenting that for review and feeding back the review into a final document. Yeah, sometime in September, and we've got a bit of buffer with our contract ending end of October. So that's a process, and as I say, we've gathered a lot of information, understanding, and we're just trying to distill it. So this comes at a good point in the time to sit with you and get your reflections and add to and emphasize some of those understanding that's been generated so far. So that's the kind of overview of the program. Thanks, Shay. Yeah, and just to reflect on that, so stakeholder mapping, this was just an earlier version of that, and we've built on it quite a lot subsequently. We've kind of taken a themed approach to it all in terms of looking at the economic, social, environmental, and cultural aspects. And obviously, there's multiple connections across those different aspects, and likewise stakeholders. And so a lot of the people we engage with have reflections and information around the economic situation, the social, etc. Yeah. Thanks, Shay. So in the end, at the moment, stakeholder database has about 50 or so different organizations. And from that, we identified representative organizations across the different interests. And we've had about 31 meetings. Half of those have been in person, sort of an hour to 2 hours. They've ended up being a lot longer than we anticipated because the people have a lot to give and a lot of passion and interest. We've taken a similar structure to today, where it's semi-formal, where we've just asked people to give us the history of their connection, because the front piece of the report will be the sort of timeline that we're going to build on there in understanding the history of the harbour, what's happened over time, some of the big issues or big events, and how that's impacted the state of the harbour, and likewise the benefits derived from people's use of it. So we've started off having that conversation, understanding the connections, and then talking about some of the issues and opportunities, both existing things that are happening at the moment, things that are planned, yeah. And some initial reflections. We're not going to go into the detail because we want to gather yours here today without, saying what's happened, what's come out of it, but some higher level reflections, and Shay and Stu jump in, is I think the overwhelming one is there's significant interest and a need for action. People are very passionate about the harbour, and often you go into a catchment or a setting and there's stakeholder fatigue, but that hasn't been the case here. People have very interested and making themselves available for however long it takes to get across their connection and their interest. And so that's a huge positive, I think, what it is. Engagement's been very rich. As I say, some of these meetings have gone on for some time because people have very deep and long connections, as many of you have and reflected here, and they have a lot of ideas and are doing a lot at the moment to make a change. So it's been a very rich process. And while many of the issues and opportunities identified in the 1990s may not have been addressed to date, there's a lot of successes as well. And so that provides, I think, a good foundation for to build on in terms of some positive solutions going forward. So there's lots of good things happening in isolation, and I think it's great. I think what's really missing is sort of cohesive building on that to have cumulative positive impact. Yeah, so there's a lot of good going on despite the health of the harbour not being at its best. Yeah, and I think we've got to a point through the engagement where it's quite clear what those key themes or issues are. So we've reached a level of saturation in terms of quite confidence around what those themes and issues that have been raised are. Yeah. Yeah, and so a very key point about the process and the report is that we're working very closely with Edward and the team who's writing up the cultural narrative, and that is a critical part of this, is that that will be woven into the report. So, and Edward, I don't know if you want to expand on that at all. But
yeah, well, currently that work has been the narrative is being written by Rachel Wesley. It'll be ready in time for that integration to occur. It'll bring through that fabric that we need to see in terms of the cultural, multiple connections and values. So I'm looking forward to reading that too. But also Rachel's got an awful lot of material to draw.
Yeah.
And a bit of work to disseminate all of that.
Yeah.
Together. Yeah.
So I think that is the challenge for us is distilling everything in. A lot of information, a lot of understanding, and so we've got 50 pages of notes that we've been working through from some of those engagements, plus all the literature and material that's come to the fore. So that's an important process, and Rachel obviously. So yeah, but exciting opportunity.
And I'll just probably add to that, just reflecting on those engagements. People have been remarkably generous, both with their time but also with their information. So So I think that pivot that Dave mentioned, where we went from, you know, sort of reference group to individual sessions, has meant that people have really dived in quite deep. A lot of people have been working pretty hard or been involved in issues, and you know, when Edward mentioned the aluminium smelter, you know, that's come up a number of times. Obviously, the wastewater getting out of the harbour has come out a lot of times, and a lot of people have had really long held passion, which is great. I think also the thing that's stuck out to me compared to other sort of similar processes is the amount of positivity. And you know, whilst there's quite a few sort of negative things that have come out, it's all been quite solution focused, I guess, in terms of you know, people's suggestions and recommendations, which, you know, often you get involved in these conversations and it ends up just being a bit of a mudslinging fight. So it's been really quite enriching in that regard. So yeah, I think, as Dave said, we've got mountains of information to get through now, and we've got some pretty clear ideas. But yeah, it's been yeah, really.
We'll see if there's any questions. I think Kevin.
Just going back to your list of the stakeholders, you seem to be, and I only had a quick glimpse of it, but you seem to be light on recreational groups in the better end of the harbour of Port Chalmers. You did all the Ryan Club, the North End, and Otago University, but you didn't do, I might have missed it, you didn't do Port Chalmers or the Port Chalmers Yacht Club, or the sailing groups down there, the boat owners at Deborah Bay, and so that's quite a different dynamic.
Yeah, so I guess on that, that's an earlier.
Right. Cool.
But we're not in a position to talk to every single group either.
No,
so
I appreciate that. It's quite, you know, it's quite a different end.
Yeah.
In the same with, you know, like in the Arrow Island, people are definitely different. Definitely, and say this loud week. A different group of people, but yeah.
Yep. No, we've met with
this is too early. Yeah.
And we have met with Port Chalmers Yacht Club as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've tried to be. So I think one of the key things about the output from this is that it will have recommendations. So we're doing all the stakeholder mapping, and there'll be strong recommendations around options for a more comprehensive engagement process, and also the institutional and organizational arrangements. That, because I don't have, that was one of the reasons why some of the 1990 work didn't go forward in a cohesive way. So there'll be a lot of thinking around options and opportunities for how people arrange themselves, whether it be working groups or to take things forward, but very much around the consultation side of things. So the next phase, there'll be strong thoughts or ideas around that.
And also, Dave mentioned earlier the Dunedin City Council work on the coastal reserves plan. So they did a lot of engagement there, and they've shared all that with us. And whilst that, you know, was for a different process, a lot of their submissions or whatever were sort of outside of the scope of the reserves management plan and more within the scope of the harbour in general. So that's been really useful, and DCC have been really really sort of supportive, I guess, in that vein.
Yeah, and on that, I think that's been very positive having Shay in all the meetings, plus some of the DCC staff, and they've been very open to engaging. So I think that's anything that happens in the harbour is going to need to involve DCC, and so this process has been very useful, I think, for building that relationship to taking things forward. Yeah. So thanks, Shay and ORC, and yeah.
And just on that council sort of thing, I think, yeah, it's quite a unique situation here where there is actually only one local council. Many other parts of the country there'd be multiple local councils and the regional council. And also similarly for a harbour of this size, the catchment's actually quite small and quite defined, which makes this project quite useful. Often we're working in places where there's a huge big input might be from another region or certainly outside of the scale and scope where we're working. So this is quite a confined place, and with quite a distinct the regional and local authorities quite clear. That's good.
Can you clarify the catchment or this, what you're defining is the study area?
Yeah, that's a good point. So so I guess initially in the project, it was really just focused on the harbour, but obviously, the harbour is a complete reflection of everything around it. And so we're looking at the catchment up to the ridgelines. But then, through consultation, it's even come out how obviously things like connections beyond those ridgelines in terms of things like the benefit of Ōtākou with biodiversity flying over the hills and things. But yeah, basically the hydrological catchment. There's then obviously a few sort of curveballs around South Dunedin, where obviously as someone mentioned earlier, all the wetlands and things that were around there, which is now actually pumped into the harbour. So it's everything that affects on the harbour, and obviously there's lots of issues there in terms of sediment loads and some of those land uses. There's a few now, but also considering some of those legacy land uses out at Sawyers Bay and things that are still presenting problems to this day.
I think also in the spatial context, there's particularly in terms of the economic, it's the gateway, to Otago, and there's international linkages with cruise ships coming in, which causes some of the tension with cruise ships potentially having more impact on erosion potentially. That's something that's not fully understood yet, but you have these linkages beyond the harbour itself, which and opportunities. It's located brilliantly in terms of it's a relationship to the Southern Oceans and the potential for studying and understanding the Southern Oceans, and you have the university. So there's these broader linkages beyond in terms of economic or research or whatever they might be. So it's it has incredible value.
And I think the economic one's interesting. We've also tried to be quite sort of broad and holistic in considering in all its different facets. So it's not just a scientific study, it's considering the social and the cultural, but also the economic. And I think your comment, Lloyd, around the first refrigerated meat exports clearly illustrates that. And so it's great having sort of that reinforced from people like yourself that whose family come from those areas where that export gateway, and you can't get away from the fact that Port Otago is a massive sort of asset of the region, and we're going to try and be balancing all these things within the context of the harbour as a place as well as the economic gateway.
Shay, having been in all the meetings, do you have any reflections that we're missing out on, or from your point of view?
I think you've covered it. I think that, there's a slide there that said it might be at a low point, but what we heard was people hearing about it turning back up and there being more nature present in the harbour, and that being a big experience. Yeah, I'm really keen to hear from you guys what you've perceived about that.
Okay. So we've got a few sort of little exercises to run through to hopefully unearth some of your thoughts around some of the issues and opportunities for the harbour. If you'd like to share those. Obviously, you all come with significant history, as you've just sort of and connection, as you've just sort of outlined, and so hopefully you may be able to share those insights in a way that will sort of build on the stuff that we've already got. So I don't know what you've got in the way of slides there.
It's a nice slide for the workshop.
Did you not have the other?
No.
Okay, no, Dave will pull one up. So mentioned before that we're sort of considering things within themes, and so obviously we discussed the economic theme, the social side of things, the cultural well-being, and also the environmental health of the harbour. And so we'd like in front of you all there, you've got different coloured post-it notes, and Dave will pull up soon and tell me what the colour coding is all about. But we'd like you to jot down to think about and jot down what you see as being the most significant issues that resonate with you under each of those themes. So Dave might be able to connect you up. Can you connect up to the screen?
I think so, sorry.
No. Yeah. All right, well, it's really work.
Right them on.
So, blue is environmental. Actually, let me get this will make it easier. So, bear with me one sec.
Apologies about that. What's that? I am, yes. Uncle.
I'll just write environmental on the boards.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yes, yeah. Yeah, just put up with the other way. Yes, it's dense.
Good. What do you say? Yeah, it's a sensitive. All right. So blue is environmental. Yeah, blue environmental, green is social, economic orange, and pinky color is cultural. And so the task is to please spend a couple of minutes thinking around the top issue and opportunity. And you might not have one for all four. So your top issue and top opportunity, and then to write them on the relevant colored sticky for each. And if you could include your initials again, in case we might want to follow up with you on something, we don't get to discuss them all. And then we're going to put these up, and the idea is to come and put your sticky under each heading. And we'll just group them on the wall, and then we'll spend some time speaking to them. So we're going to start with the social. So I think spend time writing down all of them down, and then we'll discuss them under the groupings.
I guess when you think about the issues, yeah, they don't necessarily need to all be negative if you've got some positive issues to raise. And similarly with the opportunities, so just
and those opportunities can either be things that are happening or planned, and blue sky, because I think in a process like that, this is good to be aspirational. So yeah.
What's this for? Is this our visions? Social.
Social issues, opportunities.
All it means is a big sun.
You want multiple ones or just one?
Oh, look, I think if you've got if there's a burning number, then for sure.
Try to limit them to the most important ones. Yeah.
I just sent it through.
Pictures. Yeah. Okay, so let's make a picture. Yes, you can. The digits are already going. This boat access.
Yeah,
I wonder if while we're writing these, you guys might be able to tell us a little what the harbour plan is. And what it's like, what the scope of the harbour plan is, or what it's meant to, what it's intended to do, or what the point of it is, if you're able to, or unless you're, what are you planning to do at the end or something?
So
just to put, so there's a paper in Diligent in the Resource Centre.
Yeah.
So that's probably as a basis.
This one.
Just putting it out. I'll hand over
Yeah. I have had read through
Just
that. I'm
making sure everyone knows it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one that came out 3 or 4 days ago.
Doesn't actually say what plan.
It's not actually a plan, though.
This is about the
That's right,
report that
yeah.
you guys will be working on, but that'll feed into the.
It's not actually a
plan, right?
plan, it's an identification of issues and opportunities.
Yeah.
What we do with
Yeah, but
this.
we've been
will come.
talking about a harbour plan that
Yeah.
this will feed into. I just don't know what the harbour plan actually
Nobody
is.
does. That's why we're doing this first.
Right, okay, I'll go in the report,
That's
understand,
the answer.
Right, okay, cool.
and there'll be recommendations come out of the report,
Okay,
feed into that
sweet.
next steps.
And I guess we'd be hoping that understanding what the harbour plan could and should be will be a lot clearer
Okay,
after this process, because we'll certainly have some.
right, okay, cool. That's an answer.
If nothing else, it might inform our policy on boat sheds.
And moorings.
Yes,
And more.
yeah.
We need some harbour themed music just to be playing.
Sea shanties.
Yeah. 6 months in a leaky
It would
boat.
hardly be a southerly blowing wind with that view up there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how all the photos are taken on a nice day, aren't they?
Yeah.
What's it been like lately?
Yeah.
You don't want to change it though.
What's that?
You don't want to change, you don't want too many people there. There's people barrier up.
Where are you going to put that? It's the edge of Tapanui.
Mountain goats out.
What colour is that?
I'm going on blue.
Yes, we'll obviously be capturing all of your information, but it'd be nice to continue that sharing, which I think will probably prompt a bit of discussion. So maybe if we go around and we start with the one that's, I wouldn't say easiest, but it's quite well understood as around the environmental issues. And so if we could just sort of go around the table and just briefly share what your sort of key issue is, I guess, and I'm sure there'll probably be a few duplicates, but maybe we'll start with you.
My one is relates to the understanding the environmental, what do I say, health of the harbour. So bit of a stock take, I suppose, and just so we know what we're working with, and then we can then understand what the challenges are to resolve what needs to be done.
So that issue would be sort of a lack of clear understanding of the environmental health.
Look, I don't know what existing information is out there, but I suppose it may be just a collection of existing data to understand where we're at, and if there's some gaps in that, perhaps those gaps need to be filled. Before we make some serious decisions about where we can spend best, get best bang for our environmental bucks.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, I don't know this harbour well at all, but a baseline, it needs that baseline, which is basically what Andrew's saying too, and then it needs goals that we want to get to.
Yep.
We need to do that.
Yeah, cool. I just, I put down with
the water quality, as Alexa said, baseline and planning, what improvements can occur, and then ideally feeding into the wildlife and land support. The health, as Andrew said. There's opportunities to further enhance the immediate harbourside environment, and I guess I'm thinking of Aramoa and other shared cycleway on the State Highway 88 side. How, for example, a whole lot of the sycamores had been removed there, and there's been indigenous native vegetation put in, as well as, down Ravensbourne, there's a big blot on that beautiful harbour side of the great big fertiliser works on the way into the city from Port Chalmers.
Just unpicking that, I guess there's a couple of things with Ravensdown, or probably more than a couple, but the one thing you mentioned there is that's a visual thing, isn't it?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, so I see, yes, and I think, in a wider way, I think the harbour defines Dunedin in so many ways, visually, how it's placed around there, and, we make a big thing of, the environmental values that Dunedin brings, and the harbour defines a lot of that too.
Yep.
I checked climate change, I don't know, especially thinking about the harborside reserves, for example, where's water going to be in 10, 20, 30 years, before we start looking at what we want the land to look like probably need to know what land will be there. Food loss for waiho, sea lions, that kind of thing, particularly west of the peninsula, so not in the harbour, but the harbour's driving that activity. Cruise ship emissions and pollution, as well as ship strike for a lot of those marine mammals and seabirds. And then also opportunities for predator-free Dunedin around the peninsula. Harbour is a sort of stopgap for invasive predators. You're able to eliminate them on the peninsula.
I'm concerned, and I'm a skeptic of hard things that stop water and moving, and so it's understanding the bigger the ships, especially how that's going to possibly erode more of the shore, whether it's Teira only or just move it further south. You can put stuff in there, and so I really want to understand and make sure we're monitoring what we have done and make sure that it's working, or not just moving the problem. I'm interested in silt contamination in the harbour, and silt's been a huge issue, and it's almost too hard to move, I think, in some parts because of I understand, but and understanding that, understanding the biodiversity values for marine species in the harbour and how they can be enhanced, and so that we don't have too many people out there, but we might. Is actually I'd love to see activating wharves for ferries. I think years ago there were huge number of ferries that applied on the harbour taking people places, and they still could instead of everyone getting in the car. And I think we've been unambitious in that respect.
In my experience, the single biggest impact on the harbour was the capital dredging for container ships. The harbour collapsed, and I think it took decades to restore the second generation resource consents. We worked very closely with Otago, and they didn't bring in the industrial dredges, and so they did a very moderate steady, and we think it survived that dredging. So my number one issue is the need to dredge, and then managing that in a way that retains the health and vigour of the harbour. That's without a question in my mind, is the number one issue.
Gretchen.
We're just doing environmental at the moment. Yep. Yeah, I had dredging as well. Stormwater discharge impacts is the other issue. Opportunity, wildlife connection on urban doorstep.
Yep.
We're blue. So just reinforcing from over there. So have the baseline And where there actually is an issue, let's identify the cause and clearly articulate that cause to everyone so we understand what it is. And I think that's a really important thing when you start doing work, and then set remedial plans that are with a realistic time frame. It's sort of quite basic, but that's sort of, yeah.
Don't say Takanui.
Well, the first thing I wrote down is dredging, so I think we're on the same page. It's dredging / sediment management, and then I've gone to more Brian's side, like overall health of the harbour, or the ability to swim, or the water quality, because if you get water quality right, everything else will come from there. And flying into increased biodiversity. Not sure what page these ones. I think that's, we're going to do economic later.
Yep.
Mate. I'm pretty much the same as everyone else. Water quality is really important. It's an environmental issue. Got a question around ballast from ships. We've done what happens with the ballast, whether it's pumped into the harbour or not. Diesel emissions also. We've Port of Otago here actually next meeting, so we'll probably be talking about these things again. The environmental issues, marine animals, the decline of marine animals around the harbour and the Ōtākou Peninsula are a concern. Dredging, I actually had that under economic, because I think that it's important to maintain that channel from Port Chalmers to Dunedin, but it's obviously it has environmental impact as well.
Excellent. Before we go on to the next one, I'll perhaps just touch on a couple of those. These are things that have been raised by lots of people, lots of groups and lots of the literature. But in terms of that whole baseline of the water quality and the sediment quality, it's quite sort of apparent to us through this process that there was a whole sort of barrage of work that was done in the 90s, following the report of the 90s, and it sort of coincided with when the Department of Marine Sciences was established at Otago, and there's some really good studies around some of the hydrodynamics around the harbour and sediment quality and things. But more recently, most of the science is coming out of consents. And so be it Port of Otago, be it Ravensdown, be it Dunedin City Council for Stormwater. And so there's certain requirements for monitoring and things related to those consents, which across the community creates a bit of a perception of whether it's as robust as it could be, but it's also everyone's doing slightly different things for slightly different reasons. So it'd be fair to say, I think, that there's been no consistent, science that's looking at the whole health of the harbour from an independent, we want to understand the health of the harbour perspective. And so there's probably a bit to unpack there. Also the dredging, the thing that interested me, I think, out of this process is just understanding the influence of the global scheme of things with regards to shipping and the discussions around the closing of Marsden Point oil refinery, meaning that we've now got ships coming directly from overseas with the oil and gas for the inner harbour terminal, and the stress that's putting on things, and understanding that there's some the port is operating in a global system, and it's quite a sort of a striking thing to try and balance. And so I think it's a really good time now to have those discussions and really sort of set the groundwork there, I think.
Yeah, and as an example on that, Ravensbourne had some ideas around doing things better, but they said price or the market at the moment just doesn't allow them to consider that, because so they had some innovative ideas, but they felt that those economic sector drivers in the market can facilitate that at the moment. So
Sorry, who was that? Sorry.
Ravensbourne.
Ravensbourne.
Okay, has anyone got any other comments on environment? And then we'll just jump on to social issues. No? Go.
Mine was to do with better access opportunities to cater for the increasing demands for water-based activities. It seems to be an ongoing growth in this space, and I'm not sure that the harbour is that well served in terms of access. Yep.
Excellent.
No, I've got sorry. I'm different things to see here. Do we do that?
Social.
That's, ability to connect for recreation and pride. For an example, again, this is hard for me. I don't know this harbour at all. The bike trail access is excellent. I can plan that. It's absolutely beautiful. And that needs to be further built on. If you're going to maintain access to that harbour, the bike trail actually has to extend into the city to allow others to connect to it. So I just think that ability to connect for all people in the area.
Yeah, mine was same as Andrew, access. I mean, there's been an improvement in access, but I still believe there's access issues. I think quite simply we need an access plan. You know, right around the harbour, you should be able to every 100 metres access the harbour, whether it's with a kayak or swim if you're brave or whatever it is. And like the Ōtākou Way on the Ravensbourne side is still isolated. It's got a railway line between you and the waterway, you know. So, you know, there's issues in different places. The wharves in my lifetime have always seemed to be in a continual state of disrepair, where you're actually demotivated to go and fish. And
recreational opportunities so important on water, and that depends on clean water and easy access.
The harbourfront, particularly around the centre city, is pretty bad land use. You know, it feels a bit wasted on industrial warehouses and disconnected from the rest of the city that is right there, but sort of, you know, separated by that railway line in particular, but also just the fact that it is just all industrial activity. I mean, look at like the transformation of the Wellington waterfront in the 90s from a similar kind of thing to what it is today, to see what we could be missing out on or what those opportunities are there for economic activity, you know, shops, restaurants and stuff, and housing and social event space and recreational access both to the harbour and on the waterfront, and all that public and active transport opportunities around the whole harbour. There's a lot of room there, both on the water and around, and then it's connecting that to the rest of the city, making sure it's not just a loop around. In terms of other maybe more niche social issues or opportunities, obviously materials being imported from illegally occupied territories via the harbour is a social issue for some people in the community, and better Leith stream harbour connections is, I mean, environmental sort of issue, but also a social one.
And you're referring to Ravensdown, are you?
Yeah, the phosphate from Western Sahara. Yeah.
Mine are mainly access issues, especially around the old port buildings and the wharves, and that's been slowly closed off as things things become unsafe. We as generally Dunedin and just haven't resolved some of those ownership issues and had a strategy so that they've got into disrepair. I think you could, you know, I've done a stupid one. It was a long table lunch event on the sandbar, and that is about people getting out there and encouraging them out there. I mean, you see, there's a pontoon on the Waihola. Why don't we have activated things that people can actually enhance them getting out there and really seeing it? And that's, I know they're stupid ideas, but they're just that sort of thinking to get people out there and to understand it's beautiful space.
Yep. What was one long table on the sandbar?
Oh, at low tide, you.
I know.
Yeah.
Has that happened?
Waiting for might have some things to say.
But people used to. Yeah. I think I've seen cricket played out there or something. You know. And it's just about empowering people to activate it. And that's often it's just people don't. You know. Students will do anything, and it used to be quite entertaining. But
not a single stance, Kate, on the sandbar. Kate has lots of great ideas in her history.
Oh no, sorry.
She did the single stance in Middlemarch.
Yes. Anyway, No, I think it's activating it and, yeah.
Yep.
Empowering.
Yeah, I think I just sort of take a more of a sort of a holistic idea of connecting the community to the harbour, whatever that might be in a way that values the harbour. I tend to think we've had our backs to the harbour for long enough and seeing it as a, what do you call it, a utility. So I just turning that around so that people's identity connects to the harbour and the value of it. And I would see, therefore, we would result in looking for an improved environment. 200 years ago, whales used to come in there to carve. They could do, again, we get the right conditions, plus many other species.
My issue was that there's no clear champion for the harbour values at the moment. It falls between organisations all the time. And the opportunity is that there's a lot of social connection and love amongst the people for the harbour, as we've seen.
Yes, yeah, I think that's the absolute key to it, Richard, is actually a coordinated body. So, yeah, it needs to be someone, yeah, but so you need to champion the harbour, but I think we actually need to sell the harbour to the locals because there is just so much could be happening. And I know the fellas from Tapanui won't want to be sold too hard because you'll get too many people out there, but in reality, that's what you need. And if you're going to start doing all these things around it, access will be the absolute key, but you actually don't need that many access points because it's not, yeah, you don't need that. You just need good access points that many people can use at once. If you're going to do too many, you're not, you want people, you want people concentrating in areas where other people see them doing things, and then that will generate more people happening. But it's selling the harbour, selling the good things of the harbour to the people to get them involved in it. So that's got to be coordinated.
So the guy from Tapanui, when he comes down, yes, because he doesn't have a bus, so he has to bring his car. So we need to have someone. So for me, for the social thing, what's missing in the harbour is there's nowhere to park and nowhere to go and have your picnic. There's no like area that you can go for a bit of a walk close to town, and because it's all full of these big old horrible buildings and that sort of stuff. And I'm not very keen on having my pie on sand because I don't like sandy sandwiches. But I think there's obviously opportunity to have the social interactions on the water as well, like without overpaying the tours and stuff, like having the dinner, the boat dinners or the slow cruising sort of stuff, the interactive type stuff on the water. But access to me is the number one thing. Like people that I know would never go to the close harbour per se because there's nowhere to go. They'd go to Sinclair or they'd have to go all the way up to Harrington's Point or something.
Yep.
And I've never been to Aramoana in my life. So
I'll bring a bike in for you next time we're in town.
yeah, we need to do a wee bike-a-thon sometime.
Yeah.
Lloyd, you shouldn't have admitted that. You should have kept that to yourself.
I've never been to Port Charles until about 2 years ago.
I think all your sheep's living through Port Charles.
No, I know which way to goodbye. We stopped.
New milk powder.
And I'd never been. Oh, we might have driven from Larnax Carlsbad to get to Albatross when I was a kid, but I'd never ever stopped at a Ōtākou or anything like that. Past like Portobello would be about as far as I would even. It's sort of like the Wild West past there.
Now that you pay for the buses.
We thought West Otago was the Wild West.
Sorry, Emma, but that's the fact of it. Yeah. But I love it out there now. I've been out there a few times. Yeah.
I see opportunities at the Lower Harbour area. You've got Portsmouth Drive and you've got a bit of a green patch through there where the bike trail comes on to Fright Street. But all that area around there, you see Sea Scouts, and I think there's a helipad there, and it's just underutilised completely. I see what they've done in Wellington around Oriental Bay with they've created Sandy Beach there. That area would be absolutely great, apart from the wind. that tends to come up, but
We could put an ORC building there.
well,
Won't, yeah.
but I mean, there's all that land around there, that's really accessible. And I think of Auckland too, I think of all the parks and the beaches on Auckland Harbour. We could do that. There's a good beach out in Canterbury Bay, that's been taken care of, and there's a pontoon out there that people swim out to. You know, more of that sort of thing. We're going to get a warmer climate, aren't we? But yeah, what else? Oh, fishing opportunities.
Recreational fishing.
Yeah, just recreational fishing. Yes, out at Otago Harbour, there's at Boiler Point, the port have created a fishing wharf there.
Yes, the one
That's really worth going out and having a look at. Yeah. So you know, more of those and areas around the harbour.
Yeah,
would be really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. That it?
Yeah, well, I think again, reflecting on what we've heard, the access issue comes up repeatedly. And a lot of that is really big issues that go a long way back. So the railway line on the Port Chalmers side, severing any access down to the water's edge, but also just the reclaimed edge around the Portobello side, which has now obviously been raised up even further. But reflecting on the inner harbour, a couple of you have mentioned Wellington, which obviously know very well, and Auckland's the same. And again, through this process, I've never really reflected as much on the move away from the harbour boards and how that really turned all harbours, back to potentially being more public facing. And I think both Auckland and Wellington sees that. And when I was a kid in Wellington, the only time you could go onto the wharves was when the Nissan Mobile 500 motor race was on. But after the harbour boards were removed, it became a public space, and it's now probably the most active space in Wellington. And as a result of that, the conversation went away from it doesn't matter what you're putting into the harbour, the stormwater consents and things, because early reports were always that doesn't matter because there's no recreation in the harbour, so it doesn't matter. Whereas now the harbour is the key place of recreation, swimming, kayaking, people are snorkeling under the wharves and things, it's really, really active. So that's come up a few times, and I think that last point around fishing, I know there's lots of issues with young people not being as active as they used to be and all those sort of things, but I think we're also seeing it in Wellington, just that progressively closing wharves that were really valuable for all people to fish. But on that health and safety reason, wharves are slowly getting shut off, and then the cost to reinstate them is so expensive. So, but accessibility is obviously a big thing through the harbour. And Dave, you don't need to.
Yeah, just to pick up on something you just said now, and what many of you reflect on earlier is the time you spent in the harbour as kids, and whatever there's been human intervention for a couple of 100 years, and to turn this around and take it forward, children are going to be very important. And so I was just wondering if anyone's got any thoughts on the intergenerational aspect of turning the harbour around and make it the best it can be.
I think probably Edward's suggestion of turning towards the harbour is the most important thing. Activating is great, but if it's not accessible, it doesn't matter how you'll get people along for one thing and that's it. We've got to really have it truly accessible by foot, by bike, by bus, by car.
I like that. Sorry. I liked Edward's suggestion when he talked about remembering the whales carving. Just imagine that in the future, in your front door.
Yep. Yeah, pretty special, isn't it?
And there's been pods of orca whale. We used to sit at the point in Meridian Street and come up the harbour. They still do that. It's not that long ago that they did swim up there. So, but obviously they're not carving up here now. But I mean, orcas have been up that harbour in recent years.
I've seen a right whale in there in 1959. There have been whales in since, but I've never seen them.
Yeah.
chuck that in my, I put it in my pink, but it goes in anything. But yeah, that return of the whales is like, you know, the Weller brothers obviously got rid of them pretty quickly and scared them off. But but they did the same thing in Wellington, and it's only been in the last 5 years that whales have actually started actively returning, right whales in particular, orcas. So here already they're small enough that yeah, we do get them like pretty much every year in the harbour, but those like right whales and your sperm whales and stuff that would come in very likely will return from talking to some marine scientists, like they fully expect whales to start returning once. It's just that they have such a long generational time that they remember not to return to the harbour because they'll get killed by someone. That it takes a long time for that to come back. But we are actually at that point where they're starting to realise they can come into the harbour and we won't kill them, hopefully. Yeah. So that's
I
cool to
think
see.
that long time thing is quite interesting, in terms of an ultimate plan, needing to have a long-term vision and then actually stick to it. And we often don't like long-term visions because they feel too unrealistic or too aspirational, but yeah, it's amazing what you can achieve just when you chip away. And it didn't take long, I think, when we had the hui out of the Ōtākou, you realise it didn't take long for the harbour to be really turned upside down, in the latter half of the 1800s. And so it's going to take a long time to get back to that stage where it once was, but why not?
I think the important thing there, it is a fragile thing. And I think that's the key point that people do not probably realise if they don't know the history of the harbour, how easily it is to turn it upside down.
Recognise the fragility.
Yeah. Yeah, in terms of the intergenerational thing, there are, I think Andrew made was it Andrew, someone that we didn't need to have everything perfect absolutely everywhere because and it would be awesome, but for access and connection, we want to have some quality locations. We've got quite a few quality locations already, which is awesome. Like we have got McAndrew Bay, we've got some destination playgrounds, we've even got Te Raoni now as well, which is fantastic. We have got, so making the most of the ones that we have got, promoting them is awesome. But the thing that we are lacking is in Dunedin itself. We haven't got anything really apart from the cycleway, which is good but still quite industrial. It's not really a good connection with the nature of the harbour. You often can't get to the harbour. And just talking to Polynesian community, for example, in South Dunedin, real urban community, they said, where the heck do we go to have our Sunday picnics with our old people, our young people, it's the accessibility right for urban Dunedin to the harbour that's not there. We don't have a destination playground next to the harbour. We don't utilise those places people are talking about where we could, where there is a bit of space. Yeah, that's the thing, I reckon.
When you've got railway lines and state highways keeping people apart from it, as far as I can see, it's really hard to get there. I love where the molars are. I remember seeing them.
Yeah, that's the spot that should be utilised.
Yeah, man, that is absolutely brilliant. But how hard it was for me to get there on foot.
Yeah, and that's obviously come up a few times that severance through the CBD from the roads and rail is a big expensive thing to get over to then enable you to activate the harbour.
And even from South Dunedin to like that harbour front, it's pretty difficult with that road going through.
I think I've got vague memories before the Jetty Street overbridge, and even that as a walkway is hideous. So the one thing that you could connect with is so unpleasant, and the one at the railway is so, I mean, it gets really busy in the morning. It's it's not really fit for purpose either. And then either any of the alternatives are much longer down there.
I get the railway bridge that they've re-established in Oamaru gets an immense amount of use because it is seen as a novelty, and every Well, you know, you go down to the farmer's market on Sunday, it's just chock-a-block with people.
It's a wonderful bridge, the one at
Yeah,
railway
yeah,
station. You don't get a view from it of the harbour or anything though.
My worry about all this, and I think it's, you know, it's a really positive step and we've got to keep it going, but there's a slight difference between the places that we've been talking about. As Wellington's got 500,000 people floating around it. We've got stagnant population that's not developing much. And so the key is we've actually, what you're trying to do with the harbour might be actually a real key of getting the whole area going. So, but whatever we try and get going at the moment will probably have to be quite long term because we actually have got limited resources. But if the people want it, yeah, that's my biggest worry. It's actually, you know, that it was floated to do it. There was quite an extensive operation done at the top of the harbour, the head of the harbour, with a big development that was meant to go ahead there. The university was going to be part of it, and everyone else was going to be part of it, and it looked all quite flash, but you know, probably money stopped that and the size of the population. So it's really important that we dream, but we've got to temper that with the reality of we're 100. Yeah, they've got 50,000 ratepayers. That's about it.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's always a challenging issue.
And I'm not trying to, because I think what we're doing is quite tremendous. It's right, but it's got to be balanced with that. Yeah.
And I think just on that, Auckland was obviously slightly different, you know, because the America's Cup came along and lots of capital came in. But that initial injection in Wellington was actually quite low key.
It was,
you know, it really was just public open space work on the waterfront. It's only slowly now we're starting to actually get big buildings. Obviously, the museum was probably a big thing that was put there, but a lot of the waterfront is actually pretty basic.
Yeah, it is. Yep,
It's just getting people there.
Yeah.
If you look at what's happening in like Wynyard Quarter, let's say Wynyard Quarter in Auckland, that's been like a really inspirational. That's awesome to see how that's come along. But now Auckland's looking for they really want a stadium on their harbour front. We've already got that, so that's I don't know. We're already a step ahead, and that in that regard, it's just not really on the harbour front because no one goes to the harbour front right next to the stadium. So the opportunities are there, and I think like you're 100% right, Kevin. But I kind of see that space as the space where Dunedin does grow, and you know, if you get housing there, you're going to get more people there and more commercial activity and all sorts, and that's how the city does grow into the future.
Yeah, can I just add, Kate will remind me if I got the time frame wrong, Richard, but early 2000s there was a plan change for the harbour side area, and from industrial to mixed use. I can't remember how much of it, but that went through a legal RMA process or whatever. So there's a portion of it that is already, Cairns is one as an example, which is a mixed use. So potentially you could have your accommodation, etc., CAFs and stuff like that, pretty much as of right. And we've seen what the developer's done with the Sawtooth building, whose name escapes me. Lund, thank you. So the planning has been done, but economically it hasn't kicked in.
Yep.
So yeah, people, and of course hotel development on Wharf Street. By a Chinese couple that failed. That was, I don't know, 15 years ago, maybe longer.
No, it wasn't that longer.
No.
I sat on the hearing, so perhaps my memory's going.
2009, I think, was the Harbourside went through.
And that's why there's nothing happening.
Good segue into the economic stuff, which is obviously a big consideration. So if we look around, we're sort of starting to get dangerously close towards 3, so we might have to just pick up the pace a little bit. But in terms of economic issues,
I'll try and be as diplomatic as possible, but I think we need to recognise that lawfully established essential activities, such as port activities, need to be able to undertake their business going forward, but I recognise the importance of, Stu's already alluded to, consents that require environmental monitoring to ensure that those activities are done in a sustainable way. But I just think that's really, really important. It's not all about protection, it's also about enabling and ensuring that we can still send primary produced products to the other side of the world as long as it pays their bills, or a big chunk of them anyway, and including Ravensdown fertiliser. I mean, that is once again an important business that's been lawfully established, whether you like it or not, and it plays an important part of the pastoral farming industry, and probably I'd argue horticulture as well. But yeah.
I'm not trying to copy you every time, and you will see it's already written down. I think ensuring the port. No. Ensuring the port understands the value other than economic and the value that the harbour should be held in, even if it's not at that point yet. And then the port figures out how to maximise. By the way, I think they do a pretty good job of some of this, but until people are really valuing the harbour to the degree it should be, it's hard to get the port to really do that, and we can't really expect them to. Saying that they need to figure out how to maximise economic drivers while not allowing further degradation and further enabling regeneration and connection. So we need a really clean port. I have a second one here, and that's again about the accessibility thing. Develop economic opportunity along the harbour side, but that will rely on accessibility, which is getting across that main road. And somebody, I think it might have been you, Alan, brought up that they manage that in Wellington. They have also in Auckland, but both Wellington and Auckland had big highways running along its harbour that they had to get across. But obviously, they got to a bigger size before they could really address it, but we should keep looking that way.
Mine's a bit different. I mean, the port port company is like the big brother of the harbour. You know, they do, like all big brothers, you know, they do some good things and they do some bad things. But like all big brothers, they think they're pretty bloody good, you know, and they
Well, that's reality though.
they think, you know, their way is the only way. And if you're really good, they'll give you an ice cream and you'll say thank you, and they'll think they're bloody good, and it just carries on like that. And at some point, they need to realise that the community, little brother, needs to have some balance. It needs to be listened to. It doesn't want ice creams and trinkets.
Yeah.
It actually wants a steak. Right? So let you have it.
I will. It's called $20 million I'll give you, Brian. So spend the $20 million wisely and you'll get everything you want. Simple as that. Get a steak or two. And you'll get it every year.
Something simple.
There's all those multiple transport connections down the harbour, whether it's road and rail, cycle, walking and shipping in small boats. So there's all that, some of which, as we've noted, and there's access to the water. And I guess the other economic thing that occurs to me is the tourism potential of a clean and vibrant harbour.
Yeah, the three things I picked up. First one is the biggest, but already kind of talked about it. It's just the commercial activity in that waterfront area. The massive potential there. If you I know that through the FDS, some of that has been the sort of strip right around has been rezoned a bit, but it is largely still industrial only, if I remember correctly. And then obviously there's massive access issues as well, just for people to get to easily. The other two smaller scale, I guess, economic opportunities are the ecotourism stuff that exists already, but there's those sandbars, the Adamoana and Tairua Head are all internationally recognised bird sites, and obviously the potential return of whales and things like that all provide massive ecotourism opportunities, some of which are already being exploited, others aren't necessarily. And then also around Ōtākou, the bike trail, I think there is an opportunity, there is massive opportunity there. There's not really any sort of many bike friendly cafes around, and I think there is definitely opportunity around there. Not to the same extent, the centre city kind of harbour side though.
Yeah, mine's more or less the same. I've said you have to maintain it as a working port, but not at all costs. And I had two words down. One, I said port at times is really unempowering, but at others they're just paternalistic and not in a particularly nice way. And it is an asset of everyone's, and the port is owned by everyone. And I think sometimes the directors take too much. And I think even around this table, we sometimes claim it as ours when it's actually everyone's. It's just, and we should enable that.
So what was first, did you say it was sometimes empowering?
Unempowering.
Unempowering.
Yeah. Yeah, people having, it's like yeah, I think they want to take good ideas often as their own.
Yeah.
And I'm just delighted to see you guys running this, because at one stage Port Otago thought they were going to run this event. And again, they wanted to do it out of generosity, but just knowing what their patch is sometimes. And I don't think I should be in the next meeting, but I'm probably not going to be, but you know, and have those discussions there. Yeah, I think that activation and having things like cafes and stuff that will bring people there are great. The saddest story, and talking about the stadium, we think it's great. It's the saddest thing is we provided access to the waters of the Leith and the resource consent for the stadium, which was then closed off in order to have more car parking. That is the saddest sort of story that is reiterated whenever we do these things, and it's all about getting car parks in there instead of bike racks or anything else, or just people, places to walk. And it was all about commercialising stuff. And it's done time and time again, and it will happen again if we don't have a plan for it.
Living near the mouth of the harbour, I've always been impressed with the fact that the harbour's a lifeline, both import, export, and a necessary thing. The trick, though, is to have that, and also have a harbour that is healthy and community connected. So I think economically, I think the port function is the big play, and to be able to work that in a way that enhances that harbour and is also successfully commercially. I know to a degree they are subject to whatever the whims are of the shipping companies and the types of ships or cruise ships that might come here, but also I know they are sometimes isolated from the thinking of the communities that they live with. So there's all that sort of massaging to go on to make sure that the commercial activity of the Port Otago is working for us. And I think there's some pūtea, what I call money there as well, because it's serving all of Otago and beyond, in fact, Southland and parts of Canterbury come in and out of there. So we should be seeing more put back in.
Okay.
Elsewhere.
Mine's the same. Maintaining a city and a port on the doorstep of the harbour means that we will inevitably have some trade-offs. Yeah, obviously roads encroaching and eating up the harbour, exactly, and the salt marsh areas and things like that. That has happened, and we've made deliberate decisions around that with cycleways and things like that. So yeah, there's definitely trade-offs that happen. Port dredging as well, and stormwater too. That's a big one to try and sort out economically. So yeah, they're trade-offs, and they require a long-term vision rather than just thinking, oh well, trade-offs. Yeah, you have to set course your long-term vision. Opportunity Harbour is a marketing asset, and it's not just for people to come to the harbour. It's about Dunedin, all of our products, our facilities, our institutions like the university, and for the port itself in a modern business world to be operating within a beautiful harbour that's got great environmental values. Actually, that's going to be a strong asset, and for them too, marketing wise. So yeah, all those things.
I think we've got to remember the shape of Dunedin. And we're contained within these hills. And we need to, if we want to allow Dunedin to grow, and if we want to have a sustainable population that can afford to live here and afford to have a good standard and be able to attract people here, we've got to be able to have an industrial area that will have activities, so you've only got that area. So it's a balance between how do you get access to it, because good industry will want to be near the port and near the rail, near the road. So that's just a fact of businesses, I suppose. So it's critical that we just remember the shape of Dunedin. So where do you put them if you don't have them where they are? And to change, you could change all that, but you'll need a lot more people to be able to afford the cost to do that. So it's a delicate balance. And then, so like, and access wise, if you go right down the harbour, and there is a lot of good access points, but generally there's a wall right around the harbour. So, where do we actually dig in and make those accesses? And so we need to be doing it wherever you put an access in, there's plenty of room around that access. So again, that will limit where you can actually do it. But the one that I first wrote down is actually people of Otago actually need to be in that. I know there's work being done now, and hopefully most of that's being done is actually of the criticality of Port Otago to Otago, because it's actually not just the gateway for stuff coming in. It's actually Otago's gateway to the world. So I just don't think we actually realise that value. And perhaps we need to do. We talk about the dredging impact. It initially was, that was shocking. Edward, if you go back when the first big container one was done, that was just let's get it cleaned out and get going. But I think the consent team and everything that's getting put upon them now it's the key to that is going to be the monitoring, ensuring that they are doing it the right way, and always looking at better ways to do it. I think that's the real key to it. But limit the port too much in an exceptionally competitive environment. Let's hold them to account to the consents they've got and keep working on that. But in reality, close the port, you might as well move to Wellington, really. I'm pretty serious about that. But, that's probably where it is. We just need to really understand the value of that. But I'm not giving them a free environmental pass, but I'm just saying that we need to understand the real value of that port to the whole region, to the Highlanders region, actually.
At the end of the day, at the end of the day, the port's vitally important to the whole area. So, but we have to have a port that is that works on the environment as well. So, and they understand they're part of the environment. So, obviously, to minimise, to be able to do their core functions, but in a way that doesn't have adverse effects. So, I think that's important. But also, it goes for your town planning and stuff. But I think it's really dangerous. I think you got to. I think we just need to, for economic improvement, I think we just got to try and make it a nice place to be. There you go. So that's just trying, because if you can make it a nice place to be, it'll get recognised, then the people will come. I don't think you can make people come with cafes and that sort of stuff. I think you actually have to provide the place for people to come to, a reason for them to come. And that's going to be by, you just got to have your economic activity, but then you have this, we just got to look after what we've got and keep making it better on, incremental steps. It's not something you're going to change overnight, something that's going to happen over a longer period. So I don't think there's no silver bullet, and there doesn't need to be. I'd like to see this area down here tidied up a bit.
Enough said about the port. But there are other commercial activities that take place. We have a fishing fleet, I think. I don't know much about it, but surely we need to facilitate that. And the other thing that we do have is a huge sustainable cockle resource in the middle of the harbour and around the edges of the harbour. I think there was an MB report, MPI report, that identified it as being one of the largest cockle beds in the Southern Hemisphere. So there is some commercial opportunities around here. Edward, you probably know more about it than I do, but yeah.
Okay, that's great. And again, no surprise that there's some similar themes have come up, particularly around the port and yeah, it's been great, the engagement with regards to that. And I would say it has been really quite generative. I don't think anyone sees a situation where the port gets shut. Yeah, but it is really around that. I think your analogy, Brian, around Big Brother is quite sort of, I guess, pertinent to just a lot of the conversations we've had. So there's a lot of stuff around perception, yeah, rather than yeah. So I think it's positive there. So it's great. I'm just looking across at the time, and I know you've got the port coming in at 3, I think it is. So we've only got sort of 5 minutes, and the last theme is around that sort of that cultural side of things. I wonder, Edward, whether it would be appropriate if you were able to share just at a high level some of the issues and opportunities that you see with regards to that.
Yeah, look, I think the main thing is we have memory through anecdotes, records, recorded or from elders, past generations of what that harbour was like. So I think it's important to understand the history, cultural connection, and the importance of that for tangata whenua, and the possibilities of what could be, really. That's about all I could say, really. And it'll come out in the narrative, but and you'll be able to incorporate it. But I think it's that longitudinal connection and sort of bringing those values into the way we look at and value and hold the harbour. It's just summing it up. In the trying to stick to time.
No. Well, I think I think the narrative's going to really sort of cement that, and I think there's a strong feedback from a lot of people really around the role of Ōtākou in taking things forward as well, and through education, through science, through
My father used to talk about a fish, the pua mōdua. It's no longer there. It's disappeared. I never saw it. My ancestors were responsible for chasing the whales out too, but we're hoping to see them come back. But the fishery that used to be in that harbour was phenomenal. The barracuda, Kevin probably remember when they used to school. You wouldn't want to be swimming in the water at the time. But,
sitting on the back of your P class, from snapping at you.
And so from that quarter, just in a lifetime, the change has been phenomenal. And I'm talking and then looking beyond that, multi-generational. So context about the harbour, their fragility story, I think is quite important to build into the report.
I guess it's easy as humans to see things as more robust than they actually are in any natural system. When it does flip, it's hard to turn it back over again. Okay, well, that's been really useful, and hopefully you've sort of felt that you've sort of been able to give us a bit of insight into your sort of reflections and position and things. So we'd be keen to capture all of these. And it will sort of build on, I guess, the big body that we've already got. Don't know, Shay, whether you want to sort of say anything more.
Trevor, thanks for your insights. And I think probably we just want to capture your think as well. Just to get them to put it on the map and then spending time. Afterwards or something?
You want to put them up there or just give them?
Oh,
we'll just pass them around.
I'll approach that more now. Look at that.
That's enough. I'll raise something else.
If you have any further thoughts afterwards, you can email me. I think I put my email address on the agenda, so feel free.
No, thanks.
Curtis, Stu, Dave, Jay, thank you very much. I did think it would be a welcome relief from water or something else. And it's generated quite a lot of cordial and conversation, and you can see that people really do value, and so really appreciate the workshop and the work you're doing, and we're looking forward to the annual report. I think there's further opportunities to come together as we go forward. So ngā mihi, kia koutou, kia kaha, ki roto ana mahi. So keep to the task, and we will look forward to seeing you come back. So I think we've come to the conclusion of the workshop. So and as we opened, I'll close our workshop with karakia. Unuhea, tūru tapanui, kia māma, kia wāte, te nākau, te tēnana me te wairua, i te ara takata, koe a rā e anō, i whakaire ake, kei roka, haumie, hui e, kia ora tātou. Have you got port coming in?
Yep. We do a leader of well, a statement of corporate intent. It's really lovely.